Hi guys, he's Cam from DVD and Impera team, and this is the battle preview. Now, moving to the first part, Hoplites. Hoplites got a major change in 1.1 update. Well, basically because they do not use any special abilities. Now their phalanx formation is a permanent formation, so Hoplites use it at all times, at cost, of course, of reduced speed, and by reduced speed I mean basic speed, so they walk much slower, and they also can do sprint. They only move into sprint phase during charge, so they keep the formation intact for longer, and it looks much more realistic also. So basically they just move slow, and they do maybe a fast jog during combat. As for their new stats, well, some might say, wait, but they had huge bonuses in previous versions. Yes, that is true, but I wrote it many times on the Total War Center. They got so huge stats because Creative Assembly did some kind of a bug with formation stats, so they actually units like Hoplite that used Hoplite formation, or units that used shield wall formation, actually had their stats lowered when even if it said that it gives them bonus. So for example, if you had one unit of Hoplites in the formation and second unit without formation, the first unit would actually be losing more guys, even if it had some major bonuses. That's why I had to give them such a huge amount of bonuses, so they would actually, fight as they should. But now they Hoplites basically are slow, heavy infantry, early heavy infantry in many cases. So they perform well on their level, yes, and they are very strong in the early phases of the game, where there are not so much other heavy units, like heavy sword units, or units that can basically outmatch them in melee combat, especially prolonged melee combat. Of course, this is not so much the case for elite Hoplites. Well, basically because Hoplites are not spearmen, and by that I mean they are not strictly spearmen. They use both combination of sword and spear in close combat. That's why Hoplite stats, especially some elite card units, are always higher than stats of other spear units, but on the same time they are lower than stats of elite sword units. It's kind of a trade-off, in my opinion a fair trade-off, because they are both good versus cavalry and both good versus infantry, which is both, of course, historical and logical. Pike units, and this one is tricky. It's one of the most trickiest things to balance in the game. Why? I also wrote it many times on Total War Center, but let me rephrase myself again. Pike phalanx has a lot of problems, and basically the formation is very fragile, and by fragile I mean even smaller changes to other areas of battle balance can unbalance them. So for example, if at certain hit chance they were balanced, but other units, for example, were dying too fast, for example like spear versus other spear combat, I had to lower the hit chance, but at the same time the phalanx got totally broken, like they were not even able to kill anyone. And it's also a part of old story where Pike units offensive or defensive units. Well, the truth lies in the middle. Pike as a weapon is offensive weapon. It's heavy, so you can't use it for prolonged time, because you will basically run out of stamina. It's also a bit heavy, so you can't even stay in formation, like perfect formation, yes, with pikes pointed at the enemy, because you will get tired. Of course, there were some inventions to help with it, like straps, but still even like this kind of strap would maybe help with holding Pike in position for longer, but for the actual strength of thrusting with it, it won't do much. And here comes the strength of an arm, the phalanx soldiers. So basically they are still limited by it. Yes, so in other words, in theory, the longer phalanx stays in combat, it actually should perform worse. So it should perform good at the beginning, because Pike as a weapon has a lot of force, but the longer they are in combat, the worse they should be. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like this in the game. Why? If you give Pikes good attacks and kill capabilities from the start of the combat, it won't go down, because somehow because other units, units that are attacking Pikes, will get, of course, tired too, so their stats will be lower. And even if Pike stats will get lower, yes, with the pronged combat, it still won't do the trick. They will just kill more and more. On the other hand, if you give them low melee stats, for example, low damage, which is often used in other mods, but for example, good attack, it will work like this: that they won't kill much from start because they have low damage, so they can't deplete the HP output from other units very fast. But when they start to rank up those HP points on other units, it turns into slaughter. I've been through this, I know this, I know that a lot of people do is they even go up to the point where they give armor piercing to Pikes. Don't do it, please, because like I said, it will look like that at the beginning of the combat they don't do much, but then don't be surprised that, for example, regular Pikes will rout, for example, Kilbanari Legionnaires in frontal combat. Yes, Pikes should be strong frontally, but for the gameplay purpose, and maybe even for like historical purposes, it can't be like this in most cases. I do think that Pike units should beat any other unit from their own level. So, for example, Levy Pikes beat all other levies, regular and Thorax Pikemen beat units like Hastati, or maybe even Principe, in case of Thorakitai. But they shouldn't beat units from much higher levels, at least not without taking a lot of casualties. Because, well, if even light Pike unit can hold their own and maybe even beat in prolonged time units like Praetorians, then, well, there is no incentive for player to use any tactics. You just put Pikes, leave them there, and you have all the time in the world to either let the Pikes kill them or run them down with cavalry or ranged units. So that's basically my opinion, is that Pikes should be somewhere in the middle. They should have good offensive stats and good defensive stats, but they shouldn't excel at any of those things. So they are able to hold their own frontally, they will beat any other unit of their own level frontally, which means that, for example, Silver Shields are the best unit in the game frontally, because in theory no other infantry could match them. But they can be killed even frontally. So if you would throw a lot of people at even Silver Shields, after time they will fall. Of course, it would take a lot of elite units to do it, and of course it would be much faster with flanking or rear attacks, because even Hastati can do serious damage to Silver Shields from the back. And moving to the part of flanking and rear attacks, well, I always strive to have a good impact of flanking and rear attacks. It can't have, of course, that's huge impact on everything, because, well, AI, after all those changes we tried to do with spotting distance, with other things, well, it still is not able to properly defend their own flanks. They are better at it, they got better at it, but it's still not perfect, and it's not like even near the level of mediocre player. So when we put too much emphasis on flanking and rear attacks, it actually makes the game to be more easy instead of more challenging. And, well, this is the main goal of Divided Impera, to make things challenging and realistic at the same time. So what changes are made in 1.1 version? Well, actual combat in terms of death ratio is a bit higher if units get outnumbered. For example, even if you have very heavy unit that got fully encircled by levies, it will take noticeably higher casualties from it. So we won't have like situations like in previous versions when you could have one unit of hoplites fully surrounded and actually beat most of their attackers. So now it's, for example, if you take club levies versus some royal swordsmen of Seleucids, frontally club levies stand no chance, but from the flanks they can actually inflict some casualties. Of course, it would still take a long period of time and many units to rout those royal swordsmen, even this scenario, but just looking at units that only fight those club levies frontally and units that get surrounded, the difference is noticeable. So it should actually help in the situations, or make it more fun, well, where players' army is a bit more heavy, and actually those heavy units should not be put on like full Achilles mode, just, you know, straight ahead, because they can take a lot of casualties, and of course rebuilding those units might be very, very costly, especially if they are experienced. As for the morale changes, well, morale got a bit tweaked, so units in general should rout more than they rout now. Some units, of course, will stay a bit longer. For example, levies, they will hold their own a bit longer, but those units that, for example, were like surrounded, well, this is the game. The game sometimes just does not work like it should. So units stay in combat, but it shouldn't be the case now. It should be fixed. I hope so. Of course, there are sometimes some certain situations where it might not work, but as far as testing, current tests shown, there was no such occurrences, at least in my case, but I have only a little time to test different things. Now to the casualties and ranged damage. Ranged weapons, well, so basically what has changed? Players who enjoyed my experimental pack, and of course big thank you guys for all the ideas and all the reports in the experimental pack, because it pretty much shaped the current combat. So ranged combat is a bit more deadly when it comes to frontal damage, but the rear flank and rear ranged damage got a bit lowered. Why? Well, and of course also the ammo of units got reduced by a lot. So unit of slingers won't have, for example, like 40 ammo just without any upgrades to use. Units have their ammo reduced, so initial casualties are a lot higher, but their ammo gets depleted a lot faster too, which is better in my opinion, because before it did not give anything to AI that their missile units have a lot of ammo, because the AI mostly went straight for the melee, and during melee the AI units were not actually firing a lot. Maybe on the second line of player units, but they weren't really doing much harm. It was common, at least in my battles, that AI units killed maybe for like 10, 15 units per battle, and it's just bad. It's bad because, well, why AI should use any ranged units if they can't cause anything? So yes, the ranged combat frontal is a lot more deadly, but of course they will ranged units will run out of ammo a lot faster too. So yes, the effects of ranged units, especially in the skirmish phase, are a lot more noticeable, but overall there aren't the battle masters in hands of players. So even if player will flank with his units, he won't have as much ammo as before, because he probably should use this ammo in the initial phase of battle against AI ranged units, and then of course the rear and flank fire is not as deadly as before. It is of course more deadly than frontal fire, but it won't be such a game changer like now. So players who abuse it, well, sorry guys, blame me, but it's all for the greater good. Yes, greater good for you. What else was cavalry? Oh, of course, sorry, I forgot the casualties. The casualties are overall increased. Why? Isn't this against the basic rules of Divide the Impera combat? Maybe, but it is good for the gameplay, because now even levy units could hold their own against elite units, or like elite units could hold their own for like infinite periods of time against thousands of enemy units and would not retreat, which actually gave player a lot of time to simply flank everything, do 50 rear charges, and you know, be happy. Now moving to the cavalry. Ancient cavalry was not really made for melee combat or even shock combat, in most cases because of lack of proper horses. Most of ancient horses weren't that much big. For example, great eastern war horses like Nicean mounts from the city of Nisa would tower above Roman horses, and there were only like few good horses that could perform charges. As some tests shown, even without proper saddle or other equipments of later of riders of later periods, the ancient cavalry could perform certain shock tactics and be effective at it. For example, during Battle of Magnesia, I think it was right wing of Seleucid forces, commanded by Antiochus himself, that consisted of 1,000 Agema riders and 3,000 cataphracts, stormed through entire Roman legion in single charge, routed it, and basically run it down up to the Roman camp. So it pretty much shows how strong was Hellenic cavalry to actually, maybe not Hellenic, but like Eastern shock cavalry, to run down entire legion in single attack. So how does it work in Divide and Impera? How does it work with the current changes? Well, cavalry melee attack is increased, so AI cavalry actually can stay a bit longer in combat and inflict higher casualties to the player, and of course the player's cavalry can also do higher casualties in melee combat, but and of course overall the frontal charges of cavalry are a bit stronger, basically mostly due to how AI performs with them. AI prefers either staying in combat or frontal chargers, but for the combat it actually works pretty well, because now AI Cavalry performs a lot more aggressive on the battlefield and can actually rout anything, not like before when they would get stopped. On the other hand, many spear units finally got their anti-cavalry skills added to them. So if cavalry, for example, charges at hoplites, well, it's a bad idea. I mean, if you take the heaviest cavalry unit in the game and pit it against like some heavy hoplites, not elite but like heavy hoplites, of course they will do certain damage to them, but when we look at the cost of those both units, it means that you basically would have to use a lot more money to actually rout this one hoplite unit with your cavalry, and it's better to simply use other units for it. But it's still, the cavalry is still not on the level of like medieval units. So, you know, the frontal charges are okay, but they are not the way to go, like to start the battlefield. Cavalry units are still fragile in combat, and especially against spear units. Moving further, war dogs. Well, those cuddly furry animals should hopefully not cause so much problem now. Most of the problems with balancing them is due to how well they were programmed. The AI unit does not see them when they are engaged by war dogs. So they acknowledge that there are those war dog handlers unit, but they don't see war dogs on the battlefield. So most of the war dogs that got killed are killed because of the actual combat, because they get involved with the soldier, and this is the point where he acknowledges them. But when the war dogs are chasing some infantry unit, and they are basically doing a rear charge, like with each step at the unit, so they get bonus from the charge, and they get bonus because they are attacking units in the rear, so their defense is a lot lower. Artillery. This one is also tricky. Well, basically, walls and towers will be easier to destroy in the upcoming version, and some artillery units will be a bit more accurate, but their damage is lower. So, for example, they should be more useful in the battles, but of course only the designed anti-infantry or anti-unit, basically anti-unit artillery units will of course outperform siege units in their in the tasks on the battlefield, but it a bit helps, yes, because now the shots were all over the place, and ancient artillery was actually pretty accurate when it comes to firing at buildings huge buildings that stand still. Elephants. Well, elephants. Anyone who who used experimental pack knows how elephants work there. So they are pretty good at routing both player and AI units. They are a bit more useful and of course dangerous when used against player. But the general mechanics haven't changed much from what you guys know. So yes, basically they go berserk if they kill too much, and they get into this raging fury when they start attacking and charging at other units. One of the big changes is how stats work now. Well, most of them is pretty much the same, but you will notice that shield armor is gone. Why? Well, shield armor was one of the odd decisions, in my opinion, and odd opinions of many other modders, that it should not be there. Why? if soldier is wearing an armor, that how does the shield add to his armor? I mean, shield is used for defense, so it's used for blocking attacks. That's why it boasts melee defense. And a shield has missile block chance, so it pretty much glances off any missiles without taking damage. Now, if I am a soldier and the guy that attacks me goes past my shield, so in game mechanics he passes my melee defense, then he only has to, you know, hit my body that is either covered or not covered by armor, and shield does nothing at this point. If guy gets past my shield, it does nothing. And why should it add to my armor if it isn't protecting me at the moment? Yes. It also caused a lot of problems for the ranged combat, because if units had such a high frontal armor due to shields, well, then the range damage was obviously a lot weaker, and it got super effective at flanks. But once again, if missile goes past my shield, if I was, for example, not able to hold it high enough or move to the cover myself from a certain angle, and the projectile goes past the shield, then why should it add to my armor? It passed the shield, so it pretty much hits my body. Yes, so that's how it works. That's why I took it down. Of course, it has some impact on how melee works, but it adds to the dynamics of it, in my opinion. And it of course helps, because now, for example, some rear charges won't be so brutal compared to, for example, frontal combat, so it doesn't change, you know. So the entire game is not only about hammer and anvil, like each and every battle, until you puke because you just do so many rear charges with your cavalry. And that's other point. When it comes, I maybe like make it a final point. What are the advantages of slower combat versus faster combat? Well, I know that many people will disagree with me on this, but I think with what we have now, with AI we have now, slow battles, and I mean like slow battles, which takes like 20 to 30 minutes just with the combat, like not with moving units around and positioning, but with combat. I think it's bad. It's a bad way to make this game, because, well, AI does not handle it. AI units are fixed on single target until they rotate or get rotated. They won't change their targets. And I'm talking about melee infantry. Cavalry changes their targets because it sometimes moves away of the combat and charges again or picks another target. But slow combat actually makes the game more easy, because player has a lot of time. He has all the time in the world to perform his 50 rear charges, which of course were a common thing in ancient battles. Yes, it's obvious that you had to charge a single unit 50 times to rotate. So yes, and of course if someone didn't catch it, it was an irony. Sarcasm or whatever. So basically, I go with faster combat, and by faster I don't mean vanilla fast. I don't mean like some other mods that make combat fast. I mean that combat is more dynamic, and this is the word I prefer to use. The combat is not fast, it's not slow, it's dynamic. So it means that it changes, it adapts to what you have on the field. And this is what provides challenge, in my opinion. So the tactics are basics of what wins the battles. Unit composition also, because there are units that can hold their own a lot longer, obviously, than other units. But it's not as easy as just make a line of units, flank it with cavalry, rinse and repeat until you are done with your enemy. So now, yes, it still works. This hammer and anvil is still the most effective tactic. Obviously, it is the most effective tactic in combat you can use, pretty much. But, for example, if you have some nice army, but you got overwhelmed by a lot of enemies, you simply might not be able to kill them fast enough before they kill you. And you know, for example, this is for me, this is what makes a lot of sense. It's not that units die so fast you just can't do anything, but even with using proper tactics, but being in very tough situation, you can win or can lose, because you just won't be able to inflict enough damage on enemy before he inflicts enough damage on you. So player will still have a lot of time to think what he wants to do, but he won't have all the time in the world, and also he won't have to, you know, to do the clicking contest because units roll so fast. The combat is simply dynamic. The battlefield changes, the lines of units changes. Player have to adapt to it and not just have a single line. Okay guys, it's been like more than half an hour. I'm actually surprised I was talking for so long. I hope you survived it. I hope you went through all of it and you understand what I wanted to say, what I wanted to give you. If you have any questions, of course, ask in this thread, ask in the preview thread. I will answer them, and hopefully you guys will enjoy what we have planned for next version, because it's great. And the best part is we are not stopping at this moment. So I hope you enjoy it. And in terms of battles, well, 1.1 battles will be nice, but I have some aces up my sleeve for next version. It will give you guys new experimental pack in probably a few months that will well, basically be a game changer when it comes to current stat system and certain AI things. I wanted to have this new system for this version, but basically it requires so much testing and so much changes. We decided that it is not worth it to postpone new version just because of it. It's better that I develop it slowly in my free time now, and it will be ready for our next version, while you have new nice balanced combat. Of course, if somebody does not like it, you still have a big collection of submods that will even make this combat faster. It will make it slower. So I hope you will enjoy it. I hope you will find your own niche in these battles or in submods, and you will enjoy our new version. Cheers guys!